Hello everyone, and welcome to teacher webinar number 3, The Power of Empathy, Understanding People's Needs and Wants. Today's webinar is brought to you by Teach a Man to Fish. We are an educational charity based in the United Kingdom whose mission is to empower young people with the skills that they need to succeed in school, work and life. Now, today's webinar is the third part in our new series for 2021 on the theme Setting Students Up for Success. And if you enjoyed today's webinar, please do make sure to join us for the next one in the series, which is on brainstorming brilliant business ideas. That'll be taking place in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday, the 13th of July at 2 p.m. British Summer Time. That's the time in the United Kingdom. And again at 4 p.m. British Summer Time on Thursday, the 15th of July. Now, before we get started with today's session, I'd just like to share some ground rules and tips for today's webinar. So you'll notice that you're all on mute at the moment. That's because there's quite a lot of us here today, so we can't all be speaking at the same time. But don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities to interact with other participants and share your thoughts, particularly in the breakout rooms that we'll be using today, while we'll be doing some interactive activities and group discussions. We really encourage you to get actively involved, bring all your energy to today's session, and we look forward to hearing from you then. And you're also welcome to use the chat box to introduce yourselves and to ask any questions that you might have throughout today's session. So now a little bit about me. Some of you may know me if you attended our webinars last year. My name is India and I'm part of the Teach a Man to Fish team based in the United Kingdom. I've been working on our wonderful program, the School Enterprise Challenge, for the last 6 years. The School Enterprise Challenge gives young people the chance to become entrepreneurs while still at school. So they plan, set up and run a real business. And in the process, they learn about business, of course, but also develop a wide range of skills such as communication, problem solving, leadership, and teamwork. So as I mentioned earlier, it would be great if you could all please quickly introduce yourselves in the chat box if you haven't already. Do let us know what your name is, what country you're calling from. And for those of you that have introduced yourselves already, I'll ask you a different question so we can get to know each other better. I'd love to know what inspired you to become a teacher. Please do introduce yourselves. Let us know your name and country. And also, if you could just take a moment to please make sure you're on mute so that everybody can hear me clearly, that would be great. Thank you very much. Great, so let's get started with the content for today's session then, and let's have a look at what we'll be covering today. So the duration of today's webinar is going to be up to about an hour and a half, and we're running today's webinar so that we can, first of all, introduce you to the concept of empathy as an essential life skill for young people to develop. Then to explore together the benefits of teachers showing and demonstrating empathy to their learners. And of course, the benefits of learners themselves developing empathy, both in the classroom and beyond. And then finally, we'll be introducing you to some activities that your learners can do to develop their empathy whilst discovering the problems in their community. And as I said earlier, the follow-on to that, coming up with solutions and business ideas to respond to those problems, we'll be covering in webinar number 4. At the end of today's webinar, I will share with you all a link to a survey. And when you complete the survey, you will be able to download a certificate of attendance. I'll also be sharing these presentation slides with you and a list of useful resources by email after today's session. So don't worry about writing everything down. Okay, so let's get started then. I want us to begin by thinking about what the word empathy means and coming to a common understanding. So I'd like to ask, what does empathy mean to you? How would you define empathy? I'll give you a minute or so to think about your answers, and then invite you to share your thoughts and definitions in the chat box. Kuldeep is quick off the mark, saying stepping into others' shoes and feeling the same. Absolutely. What does empathy mean to everyone else? Would you define it in the same way, or do you think of it slightly differently? Well, while you're having a think about how you would define it, Kajal says feeling someone's emotions. Absolutely. Let me tell you how we at Teach a Man to Fish define empathy. For us, it's all about an awareness of the feelings and emotions of other people, understanding how other people feel and being compassionate towards them, and the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes, as one of you mentioned already. Now, don't just take my word for it. I'd like to play you a really short video by Brené Brown, who is a professor and a New York Times bestselling author. And she's got this great video. It's only a couple of minutes long, and it's quite a funny one. And it explains the difference between empathy and sympathy really effectively, I think. So I wanted to show it to you all today.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no, you want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. And we do it all the time, because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
Okay, so thanks for sharing your thoughts on the video. Hope you enjoyed it as well. So now that we're all clear on what empathy is, we're going to go straight into a discussion activity in breakout rooms. So in a moment, I'm going to split you all into breakout rooms in groups of about 8 people so that you can have a discussion with your peers. Now, before I introduce what the discussion questions will be, let me just do a quick introduction to how breakout rooms work. First of all, let me reshare my screen with you. I'm so sorry about all these technical difficulties today. There we are, that looks better. So what I'll be doing is assigning you all to a breakout room, and you'll be moved there automatically. And at the end of the activity, you'll be moved back to the main room. Now, as I said earlier, this webinar, you're going to get out of it what you put in. So we really encourage you, all of you, to get involved in the conversation, unmute yourself so that you can hear each other. And if you'd like to, you're welcome to turn on your video as well. If you need any assistance while you're in the breakout room, you can click on that button, ask for help, and then invite host. But please only do that if you really need my help, because I don't want to just jump in and interrupt your interactions. So that being said, we'll have 12 minutes for this discussion. And in your groups of 8, what I would like you to do is to discuss the following 2 questions, both questions. The first one is, why do you think it is important as a teacher for you to develop empathy? And the second one is, why do you think it's important for your learners to develop empathy? And what will that enable them to do? What difference will it make to your learners if they develop empathy? Now, we'd invite you to come up with 3 reasons, 3 answers to each of the 2 questions in your groups. And then once we bring you back to the main room, we'll invite you to share the insights which came out of your discussion. So please make sure to nominate somebody in your group to be ready to take notes and share them with the rest of us afterwards. And remember, you'll only have 12 minutes for this because we're quite pressed for time, I'm afraid, with lots of exciting things to get through today. So just spend a minute or so introducing yourselves to each other at the beginning, and then I recommend that you get started straight into the discussion. You won't be able to see this screen when you're in the breakout rooms, so please take a look at the questions now. You might even want to screenshot them if you're on a computer, or take a quick photo with your phone, or write them down. In the meantime, I'm just setting up the breakout rooms. So you'll be in groups of 7 to 8 people, and you will have 12 minutes. I'm going to open them now, and you'll be moved straight there. So make sure you've taken note of the questions, and I look forward to seeing you back here in 12 minutes. Great. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you enjoyed that time to share your ideas in smaller groups. And now we'll just take a few moments to share all together what you came up with, so we can compare the ideas that you came up with in different groups. So please could I ask all of the note takers to type the 3 main points or answers from your group discussion in the chat. Please make sure to mention which of the 2 questions your answers relate to, and also, if you remember it, the number of your group, because then we'll be bringing everything to one big document, which we'll share with you after today's session. So you can compare and see what the others in the other groups were discussing. So I'll just give you a minute or so to do that now. Please do share the outcomes of your discussion in the chat. Great. So Sam has already shared some answers from group 4. Why it's important for teachers to develop empathy, because it helps them to build a sense of security and stronger relationships with other children and educators, positioning them well for learning. It encourages tolerance and acceptance of others, and it promotes good mental health, absolutely, social harmony, and can reduce the likelihood of bullying. Fantastic. That's many more than 3 reasons. You've come up with a lot in only 12 minutes. Great, and I can see that Kajal has shared from group 3 as well. If anyone would like to turn on their microphone and share live with the rest of the group what you've discussed, I think we've got time to hear from one teacher. if anyone would like to share live.
Yeah,
Yes, ma'am, I would like to go.
Great. We got, I'm not sure who said yes first. I can see Kuldeep. Oh no, Vanika has her microphone on. Vanika, go for it.
Yeah. So if teacher has got an empathy, then what she can do is that she would understand what the learner is going through, and accordingly she can adjust her teaching methodology. And if she gets to know the challenges faced by the student, then she can also help them with coming up with a solution to their problems. And this way she can have a connect with the students, and students also start developing, like they start respecting the teacher, and then there is a wonderful chemistry between students and the teacher. Now from the learner's point of view, if they develop empathy towards teacher and the teaching learning process, the learning process, then the lifelong learning that they're going to have, and once again the respect towards the teacher would be of greater amount. And nowadays that there is inclusive education, we have children of special needs also studying in our classes. So the differentiation that we bring into our teaching, they would respect that, and they would also help them out to learn things in a better way, help out their classmates just in case they are not that academically bright. So this is what team 5, our group 5 has got, the takeaways from our discussion. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vanika. So many great points as well there. And it's all about this human connection, right? So many benefits that you outlined. Thank you very much. I'm afraid we don't have time to hear from anyone else live, but as I say, please do share the outcomes of what you discussed in the chat. And my colleague Paola is kindly bringing them all to a big document for us, which I'll share with you all afterwards. So I wanted now just to share a few of the answers which came up when we at Teach a Man to Fish asked ourselves these same questions. First of all, why it's important for teachers to have empathy. Well, one of the things that we were discussing is that it can help you to understand what's driving your students' behavior, especially difficult behavior, and to find strategies to help. And what I mean by that is, when you're a busy teacher and you're in charge of teaching content as well as managing behavior, it's natural to sometimes focus on how a student's negative behavior can take time away from your teaching and how that affects the other students in the classroom. But my question to you is, what's happening below the surface? Showing empathy can help you to change that dynamic and acknowledge the unseen challenges which your students might be facing, which could be driving those negative behavior patterns. The second point I wanted to make is that you can foster empathy in your students by modeling it yourself. So a handy tip of how to do this is to take the approach, ask, don't tell. And you can do that by asking yourself, what more do I need to learn and understand about this situation? And asking these sorts of questions can give you a better insight into what your students are feeling and why they might be feeling that way, instead of making assumptions or passing judgment or jumping to conclusions. And then the third benefit that we came up with is that you could offer a safe environment for students to discuss differences. So as a teacher, you can make space for students to respectfully discuss their own differences and have healthy debates. And this allows students to recognize that having differences isn't bad. What's important is having this healthy respect for the opinions and perspectives of others, which is something that we'll be talking about more deeply later in this webinar. And then in terms of why it's important for learners to develop empathy, as some of you have touched on already, it's because it builds positive classroom culture. So through empathy, students learn to understand each other better, which helps to build positive relationships of trust. And of course, this then extends beyond the four walls of your classroom, because students can then use those empathy skills to build better relationships with people that they meet outside of school, especially people who appear to be a bit different from them. The second one, which someone else has already mentioned in the chat, is that empathy prepares students to be leaders in their community. It's an essential leadership quality, and that's because leaders must understand the people that they lead, to show care for them, and to make them feel valued. So in the workplace, empathy is key. And finally, it's an essential entrepreneurial skill. So being a good entrepreneur is all about finding solutions to solve real problems. It's no good just making a product or service because you like it without knowing if anyone else needs it or would want to buy it. So that's why the best entrepreneurs need empathy, so that they can be aware of and listen to the needs of people around them and identify problems which they could solve. So on that note, I wanted to actually introduce you to a problem-solving approach which can help your students to use empathy to understand the problems in their community. And as I mentioned earlier, the next webinar in this series is on brainstorming brilliant business ideas. But before your students can become problem solvers and come up with a great business idea, first of all, they need to know how to be good problem seekers. And that's what this activity is all about. So as we all know, in life, many problems are so complex that they can be approached from many different perspectives. And design thinkers call these wicked problems. Design educators believe that we can actually train ourselves to gain these multiple points of view. And so this exercise that we're going to go through together uses techniques from design thinking research to help students do just that. It's actually a series of activities which can be done over a few days in a week or spread out over several weeks. And today I'm going to take you through a simulation of the student activities, which we've adapted for the purpose of this online webinar, so that you can have a taste and experience the activities for yourselves before you teach them to your students. And then after we've been through the simulation together, I'll explain how you can then adapt it to do it in real life with your students. So yeah, hopefully you're all up for the challenge, having a go at this simulation with me. So the first step is called observations in the field. And what I would like you to do is to study this photo on screen and make notes of any social problems that you observe. Now, this is an individual activity, so you can just make notes on a piece of paper. There's no need to share what you observe in the chat because I will be inviting you to do that later. Remember, there's no right or wrong answer here, and all of your points of view are valuable. So please write down everything you observe. What do you see going on in the picture? What do you think the people are doing? What do you think they're thinking? What do you think they're enjoying? What do you think they're struggling with? What problems do you see in this photo? What's going on socially? I'll give you a couple of minutes to note down what you observe in the photo. What do you see going on in the photo? What do you think that people are thinking? What do you think they're feeling? Can you see any issues at play? Note down what you observe in the photo. I'll give you about 30 more seconds. Okay, there goes my timer. So hopefully you've all had a chance to study the photo and make some observations. Now, I want you to just think for a moment, reflect on what you observed, and think about how your own perspective might have influenced what you observed. So, for example, maybe you're quite a nervous or introverted person. So you saw this busy market and you imagine that the shoppers might be feeling quite stressed out and overwhelmed. Or on the other hand, maybe you thrive in busy environments. So you assumed that the shoppers must feel so excited to be there. Did you notice the older lady in the middle carrying her shopping bags and wondering if she was struggling?
Struggling to walk.
Absolutely, struggling to walk. And I can see there someone has their hand raised. I'm sorry, I can't see what your name is. Bear with me a moment, I'm just unmuting you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. This is actually the first question is, what do you see going on in the picture? Definitely everybody could able to see that the busy shopping and the people are buying the veggies and they're for their daily routine. And definitely the people are looking very, very serious because this is their daily routine. They are not, I think, enjoying. Small children are also there and the road is very, very busy and so much rush is there and must be noisy also. It must be noisy, although it is not depicting in the picture, but definitely it is going to be very much noisy also. And what do you think they are enjoying and struggling with? Definitely the chaos must be there, a little bit chaos must be there. And people are standing very, very nearby, although it is not allowed nowadays in the COVID situation. So that is practically is not. But definitely that is a daily routine that people really need veggies and they are buying. It must be a weekly market also. It can be a weekly market also. And the flats, you can see the flats, the houses around, you can see the building on the both sides of the road. That is the flats and people are coming down to buy the veggies. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much for sharing. You picked up on a lot there, and interesting that you mentioned that you noticed people's facial expressions, how they look quite serious, and you sort of inferred that maybe they're not enjoying it because it's so busy. It's part of their daily routine. So very interesting. Thank you for sharing your insights. So as I said, I was asking you to notice what you've paid attention to and why, and more importantly, what you didn't pay attention to and what you might have missed because of it being your own perspective. So then step 2 of the activity is all about asking questions to get to the root of the problem and empathize with the people that you observed in the situation. So for this simulation, what I'm going to do is split you back into your breakout rooms of 8 people and get you to role play an interview with the people in the photo. You'll have 6 minutes to do this. So half of you should take on the role of the interviewer and ask open-ended questions about the social environment, so the market in the photo. You can ask the people in the photo, what do they like most about shopping here? What problems and struggles they have in the market, what they might want to fix if they had all the money and the support to fix it, what they would want changed about this market environment, and how their life would be better as a result of fixing something in this market. So really digging into the problems that you identified when you observed the photo and trying to find out more about what the people in the photo think about the problems, what they would like to be changed in the market. So since you obviously can't interview them for real, the other half of you in your breakout room will be taking on the role of the interviewees. So putting yourselves in the shoes of the person or people in the photo and answering the questions from their perspective. So you'll have 6 minutes for that. Before I open the breakout rooms, how does that sound? Give me a thumbs up if you're ready, or let me know in the chat if you have any questions. Ready to go? 6 minutes role-playing interviews with the people in the photo. Great, I can see lots of thumbs up. So bear with me 1 second and I will open the breakout rooms for you again. You won't be able to see the photo in the breakout rooms. So I'll just go back in case you want to take a screenshot or a quick snap of it with your phone before we go into the breakout rooms. But you've had all of this time to study it. So hopefully you have a good idea now of what's going on. Do remember to think back to the problems that you identified when you wrote down your observations. Those are the things that you want to try to find out more about in your role play. So 6 minutes for this one. I'm going to open the rooms now and I will see you all back in 6 minutes time. Okay, welcome back everyone to the main room. Maybe the role play is not something that you've done for a while. Maybe you felt like you were back at school, but I hope you enjoyed it and got stuck in. I'm now going to take you through the third and final step of this simulation. And then afterwards, we'll have a chance to reflect all together on how you see it working with your students. So for the third and final step in this activity, the idea is to compare the notes from your own observations of the photo, so step 1, with your notes from the informal interviews, what you've just done in breakout rooms. And I want you to have a think about what are the similarities and differences. So for those of you who are acting as the interviewers in the last breakout room activity, was there anything that the interviewees, the people in the photo said that surprised you? Did any unique insights come out, things that you weren't able to glean from just observing the situation or looking at the photo? Any themes around the problems that you identified and sort of potential solutions, anything emerging from your research? So I'll invite you to go back into your breakout rooms for a final 6 minutes and make a map of all of the insights and points of view you discovered in this social environment, in the market, which you've just studied. And ideally you would do this as a group, one map all together. But since we're online and in different places, you can just discuss the similarities and differences between what you observed in the photo and what you learned from the interviews, see what's coming out, and then each individually make a quick map of the insights you discovered, a quick sort of visualization. So we'll have 6 minutes for that, and then I'll bring you all back together again. Okay, welcome back, everyone. I think that's nearly everyone. Right, welcome back to the main room. That's the end of the simulation of this 3-part activity into design thinking and empathy-led approach to problem seeking. Thank you very much for bearing with me. I know it's a bit different doing it in an online setting. So now that you've been through the 3 steps, as promised, I'm just going to explain briefly how it would work a bit differently in real life with your students, because there are a few differences. And then we can just reflect together on how you see this working with your students, any reflections that you want to share after having done the activity today. So when you guide your students through this activity, you should start by breaking them up into random groups of 4, doing whatever you can to break up existing cliques or friendship groups. That's because these activities are all about understanding other people's perspectives. So it really helps to mix up your group of students, people that wouldn't normally work together. Then for step 1, that's the observations in the field. Obviously here, ideally, if it's safe to do so, instead of observing a photo, your students would actually go out and observe a real social environment. That could be in the school, like the school cafeteria or playground, or outside of school, the local market maybe. And you'll get your students to watch out for social problems and note down everything they observe, just as you did today with the photo. And then when they come back to class, I encourage you to have a discussion about what the students observed. Get them thinking about how their own perspective might have influenced how they observed the situation. Then step 2, the informal interviews. Ideally, you'll get your students to do this in real life again, returning to whatever place they observed earlier and asking people questions to understand their experience better. So for example, they might ask, what do you like most about this place? Or what do you dislike? What frustrates you? What would you fix about this place if you had all the money and time and support to fix it or change it? And how would your life be better as a result? And then finally, the third step, as you just did briefly today, your students would make a map of your data. So get them to compare their notes from the observations, which they did individually without actually speaking to the people in the situation, comparing that with the results of their interviews, where they heard firsthand about the people in the situation, and get them to reflect on the similarities and differences between the two. So what did they discover through interviewing people, which they maybe missed out on at the beginning when they were only observing? And what insights and themes have emerged from their research? So in your groups, you'll get your students to make a map of all of these insights and points of view. And by this point, hopefully your students will start to have a bit more of a deep understanding of some of the problems in their community, what people in their community are going through, and the ability to better empathize with the people around them. If you have time, you could get your groups of students to repeat these activities in different social settings, or you could get each group to observe a different setting and then to kind of come back together as a class and compare what they found in the different places. Then the next step in the design thinking process will be to brainstorm and then refine ideas for different solutions to solve one or more of these problems. But as I said earlier, that is the topic for brainstorming brilliant business ideas. That's webinar number 4. So if you want to find out about how to guide your students through that next step of the process, then do make sure to join us for webinar 4. But before we move on then, let's just take a moment now to reflect together on these 3 wicked problems activities. I'd love to know, how do you see these working with your students? What do you think the positive outcomes might be if you get your students out of the classroom and learning about the perspectives of other people by actually interviewing them? Please do feel free to share your thoughts in the chat. I'd love to hear what you thought of this activity, how you see it working, any questions that you might have. Richard says, strong collaborative skills can be developed through this. Absolutely. Getting out of the classroom, it's not just theoretical, it's actually getting out there, talking to people, interacting in the real world. And of course, the communication, working as a group with their classmates, comparing their own observations with what their classmates observed in the situation. Rafat says it will support students to empathize with others. It's lacking now in our society day by day. Vanika made the point as well about this being a great tool for collecting data to inform coming up with a business idea, certainly. And Sama commented about communication skills as well. Thank you very much. I completely agree with all of your points. There's lots of potential benefits and skills to be developed through this activity. Thanks so much for sharing. Please do keep on sharing your feedback and any questions in the chat. So today I've introduced you to just one way in which your students can develop empathy and discover more about the problems in their community. And if you want to know more about how your students can become change makers and develop other key life skills such as communication, problem solving, leadership, teamwork, all the ones that you've just mentioned in the chat, then please look no further than the School Enterprise Challenge, which is our award-winning experiential learning program. So the School Enterprise Challenge guides teams of students to come up with a business idea, create a business plan, and then actually launch and run their school business. So students become young entrepreneurs selling real products or services to real customers. And our educational resources will support you as teachers to guide your students the whole way through the process. It's completely free to take part, and you can find out more and register now on our website, www.schoolenterprisechallenge.org. I'm quite sure that a few of you in the audience today have already been taking part or maybe have signed up this year. Please do feel free to share your thoughts about the School Enterprise Challenge in the chat. And any of you that haven't signed up yet, if you have any questions, do post them there, and Paola will be happy to answer them for you. So with that being said, the reason I wanted to introduce you to the School Enterprise Challenge is to then share with you a couple of really inspiring examples of students who have used empathy to make their school business a success. So the first one is this group of students from Bayumba Innovators Club in Rwanda. So they set up a business selling ibiraha, which are crushed Irish potatoes covered in wheat flour wraps and cooked. They're a really popular snack in Rwanda. So they planned these students to cook and sell these snacks 3 times per day, in the morning, at lunchtime, and in the early evening, because they learned early on that their customers were only interested in buying hot snacks. So that's the first insight they got from their customers. Then the team also wanted to take care that their business did not harm the environment. So they used this improved cook stove to minimize the toxic gas emissions, thinking carefully about the concerns that their customers might have. Next, they wanted to consider their customers' particular needs during the pandemic. So they decided that by offering to deliver the snacks directly to their customers' homes, they could help people who were maybe nervous about going to the market during the pandemic, going to a crowded marketplace, or they couldn't travel away from home. And what's more, the team actually continued to consider their community's needs when the business made just over $36 profit in 2 months. And the team decided to give 25% of their profits to support poor families in their community with their healthcare needs. I hope you'll agree, it's a really lovely, inspiring example. And then the second one I wanted to share with you is from this group of students in the Republic of Guinea, and they set up a bakery business. So last year, they produced and sold 55 birthday cakes, 7,000 donuts, and 12,000 meat and fish pies, making a profit of over $1,000. So these students are clearly great salespeople. They know how to use empathy to persuade their customers to buy from them. And what's more, the students found ways to extend the impact of their business beyond their own team. So one of the students, Fatima, taught her mother, her family members and neighbors about how to make and sell cakes and pies based on what she'd learned from taking part in this business at school. And as a result, Fatima's mother borrowed some money from her savings group, which she used to launch her own bakery business. And Fatima's mother has now repaid that loan. She's enjoying a growing market for her own business. And Fatima's family are now able to pay school fees regularly for Fatima, her sister, and her brother. What another wonderful story. As I said, I know that many of you are already taking part in the School Enterprise Challenge, so hopefully these examples have inspired you to get thinking about how empathy is such an important skill for your student entrepreneurs and how they can apply it in every area of their business, from identifying a business opportunity to how to adapt their product or service to better meet the needs of their community, right through to using their business profits in the best way possible to benefit others. So we're now getting towards the end of today's session. So I'd like to just pause for a moment and ask you to reflect. As we've been talking about today, entrepreneurs use empathy to understand what people want and what they need. So my question to you is, what did you learn about yourself and others while you were doing these activities? What did you learn about yourself and others? If you'd like to, feel free to share your answers in the chat. What are you going to take away from today's session? Lots of you saying thank you in the meantime. You're very welcome. Richard says, it's not easy to connect with people instantly. Respect others when they don't want to share. That's an interesting one. Rafat says that they learned that collaboration really works. What else have we got? Importance of empathy in the classroom and social tasks. Samuel says, full of information and help to do for your students. That's great to hear. Okay, so while the rest of you have a think about that, thinking about what you're going to take away from the session, as promised, I wanted to share with you some useful resources which you can check out to learn more about what we've discussed today. Because there's lots of things that we wanted to share with you that we didn't have time. So we'll include them in these slides, which we'll share by email afterwards. The first one is the video, which I played at the beginning, that empathy versus sympathy video by Brené Brown. Then there are 2 articles which are full of different strategies for bringing empathy to your classroom and developing empathy in your students. So 9 competencies for teaching empathy and 4 proven strategies for teaching empathy. Both of those are great articles with lots of ideas. And then the final one is actually a lesson plan on empathy through gameplay. And that's got a full lesson plan with all the things that you need to set up the game. So I do recommend you check it out. And finally, there you have on screen all of our contact details so that you can stay connected with Teach and Learn to Fish and the School Enterprise Challenge. Don't forget that registrations for the School Enterprise Challenge are now open. I believe my colleague Paula has already shared the link in the chat. If not, you can find it on our website, www.schoolenterprisechallenge.org. And that is it for today. You can get your attendance certificate by filling in this very short survey. Paula will share the link in the chat now. We'll also be sharing it with you by email along with these slides after today's webinar. Your feedback is so important to us to help us to develop more webinars in the future which are of interest and as useful as possible as they can be to you. So please do take a moment to fill in the survey, tell us what you liked, tell us what you'd like us to do differently next time. And at the end of the survey, you can download your personalized certificate of attendance. So that is it for today. I really hope you enjoyed today's webinar. This was the 3rd webinar in our brand new series for 2021. The next one is webinar 4 on brainstorming brilliant business ideas. For those of you that joined that same session last year, this time around, we've got a ton of new techniques and games and activities to introduce you to. Webinar 4 is happening in 2 weeks' time on Tuesday, the 13th of July at 2 p.m. British Summer Time. That's the time in the United Kingdom, so you will have to convert that to your own local time. And we're repeating the same session again on Thursday, the 15th of July at 4 p.m. British Summer Time. You can find the links to register to those 2 webinars on our social media channels, and I'll share them as well in the email, along with the survey and the presentation slides. So that is all from me. Thank you very much for all of you saying thank you. My thanks go to you for joining us today. I love that feedback from Kuldeep. Every webinar enriches us and makes us know about different, unique and new activities. That's lovely to hear. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Thank you so much for joining us. And please feel free to leave the session once you've had a chance to get the survey. I'll just stay here for a couple more minutes in case any of you have any final questions.